Good morning. Today is January 9th, 2003. My name is Emily Jobson and my partner is Heather Carmody, and we are students at Rome Free Academy. We are interviewing Mr. Nelson Robinson, a Vietnam veteran. What is your full name?
Nelson P. Robinson.
When and where were you born?
I was born in Cortland, New York in 1943.
What was your pre-service education?
Basically none, just out of high school.
Did you hold a pre-service occupation?
Yeah, I worked for my father in a sawmill and a wood shop, which was hard work, which is why I didn't mind going in the service.
When did you enter the service?
November 62.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
Well, I received a greetings from the president letter, which is a draft letter. And I took the tests, and it came out that I would be in finance. They said that I scored highest on CPA, Certified Public Accountant, so they said I'd probably be in finance. And I didn't want to be in finance. And I always had seen the radio on my mother's kitchen counter, and I always wondered how that radio worked. So I went to see the recruiter, and I signed up for electronic school. I actually did enlist. I wasn't drafted. Before they drafted me, I enlisted, which meant 3 years instead of 2, but I didn't care. So I got electronic school out of that.
How did your family and friends react to your entering the service?
I had this couple friends that were sorry to see me go, and one girlfriend that didn't know what she was going to do while I was gone.
Did you have any family or friends that joined you?
In the service, you mean? No.
What branch did you serve and why?
I was in the Army because they guaranteed that electronic school I was talking about. If I finished basic training on time, they guaranteed I'd go to Fort Monmouth Signal School. And the Navy and the Air Force wouldn't do that. They said they'd try the best they could. And the Army guaranteed it in writing.
Where did you go for basic training?
Fort Jackson, South Carolina. I was supposed to go to Fort Dix, and I had an uncle in Trenton, New Jersey, and I was on a train and it just kept going, and I found out that's where they sent me.
Were there any interesting stories or experiences you could tell us about basic training?
There was some interesting stories about how occurrences, how some of the guys got out of the service. One guy had his mother drive up in a Cadillac every day, right to the barracks, to see if he was okay and give him a big kiss. And eventually, he got out of basic. A couple other guys did some crazy things to get out. I guess the thing I remember down there, this was in November and December, so even in South Carolina it gets cold, so we had to heat the barracks. And at the time, they heated them with coal furnaces. Well, guess what? The recruits had to shovel the coal and keep the furnaces going. And so I was assigned that duty. And you'd alternate shifts. So every once in a while you'd be working nights from like midnight until late in the morning. One time I did that. I came in at 8 and I hit the sack and everybody else left. And when they came back at about 5 o'clock, the platoon sergeant got in my face and wondered why I hadn't gone, why I had stayed there. And I said, because I was tired, I worked all night. And he got red, and he was so mad, he couldn't believe anybody would do that. And, but he just thought about it, and then he just turned around and left, stormed out of the barracks.
Did you feel that your training was adequate?
You mean basic training? Well, it was for infantry, and this is the book. I don't know if you can see it or not. They gave us the option of, they do this for every basic training class. And I bought one. Mind you, I've got a pay voucher I brought here to show you how much I was paid. It was something like $60 or $70 a month. So I didn't have much money, but I did buy this. And it was a nice thing, but it was all for infantry. And I was going into the Signal Corps. But basically it just trained you how to be an Army troop and how to shoot rifles and march, polish your shoes and all that stuff. So I guess it trained me to know what the rest of the Army might be like.
What were you trained for specifically?
Well, you mean in basic training or at my school?
Oh.
Basic, I guess, I was trained just like you see here, how to dress and carry backpacks and wear helmets, carry rifles, shoot rifles, how to march and stay in step, and how to get along with people and live in barracks, live with people. When I went to school, I had a nice electronic education for 30 weeks at Fort Monmouth, microwave repair course. It was a very good course, and I learned a lot. It was less military there. It was more focused on the school.
What units were you assigned to?
Well, this was B-10-5, Company B, 10th Battalion, 5th Regiment. I wouldn't know that except it's written here. I had forgotten. And I went to the signal school. That was the name of the company. And it was at the signal school, I was in M company. They had letters, A through M. I think M was the last one. Then I went to Hawaii for 10 months, and I was with Stratcom Hawaii, which is Strategic Army Communications. There was no number there either, I don't believe. I think it was called Head and Head, headquarters. And then I went to Vietnam, where I was in 9th Log Command, which was actually, in order to, we found out after the fact, in order to fudge the numbers about how many people were over there, that I was actually assigned, the command was 9th Logistics Command, Okinawa, but we were all in Vietnam and Thailand and Laos. And that was just a headquarters building, we found out afterwards. And I think the 313th Signal at Pleiku. Then I went to 379th Signal in Thailand, 207th Com Squadron, which was the Microwave Communication Squadron, and the 201st Transmitter. It was our Voice of America, where we were blasting signal into Laos and North Vietnam, telling them about how good we were and how bad the communists were.
What were your tours of duty?
Basic training, signal school, Stratcom Hawaii, which was 10 months, and Pleiku, Vietnam, which was 4 months, and Thailand and Laos, which was 13 months. I had many different locations there. I don't know if you want to go into all that or not.
What was your highest rank?
Spec 4, E4. Specialist Fourth Class was official name.
What duties did you perform while stationed in Southeast Asia?
Basically, man, operate and repair microwave and this is quite a word now, tropospheric scatter, TROPO, spheric scatter, communication systems. That was it. Because what happened was the Air Force had so many men tied up with reconnaissance and bombing missions that they couldn't run their own communications. So someone asked the Army if they could do that. So the reason that we had all the communications over there was between control towers, because they had to know where the aircraft were, and radar sites had to send the picture back. And so we ran that for the Air Force, basically. One thing that's kind of interesting, that the TropoLink, I worked both ends of the TropoLink. One end was at Pleiku, Vietnam, and the other end was at Ubon in Thailand. I thought that was kind of neat. I've got some pictures of that. I don't know if you can see these on the camera or not, but if you want to, the reflection might be kind of tough. It would be nice to show you as we go along. Is that good, or do you want me to lay it flat? Or do you want to do it afterwards?
Yeah, let's do
Quite a bit of communications here involved. I've got some off-time pictures. I've got one thing we used to do was the round robin. That was a C-130 that went out to get film and mail, and we could ride along if we weren't on duty. And that went around Thailand, went over into Laos, and back into Thailand. And I took pictures, a few pictures out the window, right along the Mekong River, which divides Laos and Thailand. And I ran into a guy from my hometown. He was a medic. And I can show you the picture. There he is. We couldn't believe it when we ran, and I went to get my hepatitis shots. We had to get malaria and hepatitis shots and everything, and once a year. And I went to get mine, and there he was, Bill Van Hoosen. I said, from Cortland. Couldn't believe it. I said, I didn't even know. And he was in the Air Force, and I was in the Army.
Although you were not in combat, you stated that you had come under fire several times. When and where was this?
Once in Pleiku and once in Con Can, Pleiku, Vietnam, Con Can, Thailand. We had basically a site was nothing more than a plot of land with communications equipment set up various places, and the perimeter had a fence, and during the daytime you could see everything there, and during nighttime the lights were pointed out so they couldn't see what was inside. And on Monkey Mountain, a couple times there were shots, and we saw the results where they would put bullet holes through the antennas. And we had one guy get actually hit once. We did have foxholes we had dug around so we could drop down into them, which we would do. Just we didn't actually walk guard. We had locals we hired who were supposed to be walking guard around the edge. And these were cleared to be on our side and to be helpful. And most of them were, but we think some of them weren't. And so there was some fire. And we had bullet holes in our walls sometimes, and then the antennas. And One time I did drop down in the foxhole. It was rat-a-tat of a machine gun. We had M60 machine guns at various places here. And they were ready to fire. We could just go up there and fire them. And we used to do that. Fire into the bush. But I mean, you don't know if you hit anybody or not. You know, they would come close sometimes. At both places. And then one time I had a motorcycle there. I had one in Hawaii and I had one there once. Actually, my friend Bill Van Hoosen got me interested in that. And one time there were shots off the pavement, flattened my wheels. If they had wanted to actually shoot me, they could have. But I was never in a battle, so to speak. It was just sporadic.
Did you see the aftermath of any combat?
Yeah, I saw any ground combat, actually going to a battle zone. You didn't really do that. After a battle, if you weren't with that unit, you just didn't go out to see what happened. That was frowned on, and so I never did that. I saw planes come back that were shot up, but it couldn't make it, couldn't land on the runway. They were flying fine. As soon as they tried to descend and use their flaps, had been shot up, or their tail, they started having problems. When they started landing, they'd crash. Some would crash right on the runway. Most of them would crash short of the runway. I'd make it all the way back from North Vietnam or wherever he was, or Laos, and not make it back.
Did you ever come into contact with the enemy?
Not on the battlefield. On some of the local places, there were several instances where the locals would tell us that so-and-so was actually washing clothes during the daytime and shooting us at night. And they'd point to the business, or they'd point to the people. They'd say they're bad people. They're leading what you would say is a double life. And I had one occasion, I remember, I was invited by one of the local guards to a wedding. And several of us went, and we were questioned about what we were doing and how much equipment we had and everything. And we figured, we didn't realize it at the time, but we figured that might have been the enemy doing that. And another time, we had an air rescue base at Nakhon Phanom. And at the time I was there, it was a metal strip. The closest I came to ever actually dying is when we landed on that, and all the wheels on the C-130 blew because of the metal strip. And I'm talking about airstrip. And it was like corrugated. Something must have been rough. It must have been a sharp edge, because it blew all the wheels, and the plane was shaking and going up and down. We were tossed around on the inside. I thought that was it, but I made it, so.
Can you describe what your job entailed?
And oh, by the way, results of the battle. I saw some of the guys that didn't make it being taken in to be put in body bags and small boxes to be sent back, which makes me mad about the whole war, because of all those guys that didn't have to lose their life.
Can you describe what your job entailed?
Well, basically, just making sure the communication system was on the air, and the data and some video, mainly radar data and control tower data, was getting through. And so you'd have one end of a communications link with antennas. You'd make sure they were lined up, and if there had been holes shot through them, you might have to realign them. There was a feed horn. Once in a while, the feed horn would be shot off. And just make sure the signal was a good signal and that the customers were getting their service. There was like an order wire where you check with each end when you come on duty. And shifts were 8-hour shifts. And people were thinking they should have been 12-hour shifts. But believe me, 8 hours is long enough. And to be fair to everybody, after I'd been there for about a month, we got a new commander, fresh out of college, and he wanted to be fair to everybody, so he had us work 2 days from 8 to 4, 2 swings from 4 to 12, and 2 mids from 12 to 8, and then he got 2 off. And he figured that's the only way he could be fair to everybody. None of us liked it. We wanted to go back with, some guys liked it, 4 to 12. Some guys actually liked the 12 to 8 shift. Why not let them work it? No, can't do that. Gotta be fair to everybody. So I did that for about 7 or 8 months, I think. That's really tough because you gotta change your schedule every 2 days. What was the question?
What your job entailed?
Yeah, and you take meter readings once an hour. You take like signal strength, bandwidth, and then there'd be like transmitter power, oscillator frequency. There'd be a whole bunch of readings you'd write down. And I've always been very farsighted. I don't see that well. And they were complaining about some of my readings once. And so I got sent to Bangkok to have my eyes examined. And they gave me a new pair of glasses. I thought that was, I don't know what happened. I guess it helped. They couldn't believe that some of the readings, they said, if these readings are right, Robinson, we would have been off the air last night. You better get new glasses. So they sent me to.
Did your equipment work well?
For the most part it did. We had one instance, the longest we were off the air was about 23 or 24 hours. And we all went through a bad time for that. They had to route traffic around us. Some traffic never got through. Turns out one of the locals, and we couldn't figure it out for nothing. We couldn't get up on the air, we couldn't receive, we couldn't send. We had knobs to set the frequency of our comm gear. And they're over here, and they're not set very often because the frequency usually never changes. You got a frequency assignment and you stay on that frequency. Somebody had changed the knobs. We figured it must have been one of the local guards. And so we were off the air and we all had to go before a board and explain. And that's another whole story. I don't know if I want to go into that or not.
How were your officers?
Well, when I got there weren't any. We had a SFCs, 3 up and 2 down. Call it. And he was charged of the site, and everything was good. And then we started getting first lieutenants in. And that's when like the work schedule was changed. We actually started pulling PT in the morning. I had occasion where I liked to stay downtown. Well, maybe that'll come up later. So I wasn't impressed by the officers at all.
How vital a role was your job in the war effort?
Anybody could have done it. I guess the job itself was keeping the equipment on the air was important. I don't know how vital it was. I mean, it was vital, but anybody could have done it. The conditions weren't the greatest.
How were you treated by locals?
Very well. They were friendly. I actually didn't have too much contact in Vietnam. Very little. In Thailand, I had a lot of contact. I learned some Thai. I could carry on a basic conversation about what kind of day is it. and what were they doing, and the greeting like Sawadee Kop means hello sir. Talk about your day and how it was and everything. I can still do that a little bit. And I taught them English. It was a back and forth thing. So I'd say, and we would be downtown a lot. The sites were 10 to 20 miles from town, or kilometers, because they have the English system over there. You know, you drive on the left side of the road, and kilometers, and the money standard there is pounds, not the dollar, and things, and the metric system, not the English system. Or no, I don't even, no, I guess that was miles. That's the English system, but we did drive on the left side of the road, I know. That confused me.
What was daily life like?
Well, we had hooches. I can show you pictures. We were assigned to the main headquarters was in Korat, K-O-R-A-T. They'd assign us, well, the main headquarters in Vietnam, I think, was in Ben Hoa. I just went straight to the Tropo site there, and that was really not pleasant. My tour was supposed to be 13 months, and I actually put in a request for transfer, and everybody around me laughed, because I was getting, I don't know, all hyper about the situation, and we had to go get our own water, and I had taken the water truck out with another fellow, and while I was getting out of the truck to get the water hose, someone stole it and made off with the truck. So I wanted out of there. I just basically went to work there. That was it.
How was the food?
Well, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
In Thailand, it was much nicer. We had hooches. We had one mess hall where we all ate. If we wanted to eat there, we could eat downtown. And we had a truck that took us to and from work for our shift. We all rode in the same truck. And just pull your shift, and once in a while we get a 3-day pass to go somewhere. We'd have to get shots every once in a while, and we get to go on the mail run and movie run to get movies. One time we had a Hollywood star visit us. I don't know who it was. Christmas wasn't like Thanksgiving. They were just days. There was nothing. They were supposed to send chaplains to us. We didn't have churches or anything like that. And the chaplains never made it. Never did have a Christmas service or Easter or anything like that. You just had to accept that. But generally, considering there was a war going on, at least in Thailand, it was nice.
How was the food?
I don't remember. It was a lot of rice. I do know that we had ration cards for beer and liquor, cigarettes and gas, but we didn't really need that much gas. But none of us really ever got very sick, so I mean the food must have been clean. I mean there must not have been too many germs.
Where did you sleep?
In the hooches, they were raised off the ground about as high as this table. There were reflectors around the legs to keep the rats and mice out, but they still got in. And we had like cots, and over the cots you had to have a net to keep them out, because they would still, these rats especially, would come on your feet, and during the wintertime they'd get cold and they'd come just to sleep there. As soon as you moved your feet, they'd be gone. And they would lean on the outside of the net, so you had a net around the edge. And they'd jump and they'd lay on the net, so they weren't inside. They weren't inside, but we did have a guy that got out of the service. He claims that they were inside and they were nibbling on his ears and his nose and stuff, and he couldn't sleep. So after about 4 nights of he couldn't sleep, he refused to go to sleep. They shipped him out. But most of the time it wasn't. He just got used to it.
What was the weather like?
It was mostly warm. I don't remember how cold it got in the winter, but it was chilly, but not really cold. And it did rain a lot. Moonshine. A few months there, have a lot of rain. But a lot of sun too. It was pretty muggy, humid too, I think. We had cold showers. There was a big tank, and you just stood under the tank and opened that was it for the shower. But the sun would warm the water up a lot of times in that tank. So if you were smart, you waited till 3 or 4 in the afternoon. The sun was out, because then it would have warmed that water up. It wasn't so bad.
How did you stay in touch with family and friends back home?
Letters. Never got no phone calls.
How often did you get R&R, and what places did you see?
I saw Bangkok. That was it. I think I was there 3 days. They owed me big time when I got out. I had all kinds of leave. I never had a chance to take it because I had to work. So I actually got paid when I got out. I had about a year's worth of leave, I think. Oh, I had by years I mean 30 days. So I had about 60 days when I got out, and I got paid for 30. I lost big time in that.
What were your most memorable experiences of these places?
I don't really have any when I was in Playco. I guess having the water truck stolen when I was trying to get water. I don't know. They're just a lot of experiences. I guess in Thailand when that guy got out of refused to go to sleep. The rest of us didn't bother anybody else in there except for him.
Did you perform any unusual services or duties?
I always tried to do what I was told. I don't remember anything unusual.
What persons do you remember best from your service and why?
Well, I remember that sergeant in basic training. I already told you about that. And I learned a lesson in signal school. There was a bed check, and one of the guys wasn't there. And so the next day, the officer in charge came around, and they asked us all, if Green, his name was Green, if Green was there. And they all said they didn't know, and I said no, he wasn't there, and I learned that you're not supposed to do that, because the next day he caught me and literally pounded me into the ground. He didn't like that, and I learned not to. Sometimes telling the truth is better left, don't say anything. And another time, when I was downtown, over in one of the sites in Thailand, I think it was Udorn, and I had visited with a gal that another guy thought he was going out with, but he really wasn't. but he considered he still was. So the next morning, he pulled me out of bed, and I got pounded into the ground again. But I mean, nothing serious, but still feel the effects of it. I learned to be a good fighter when I was in the... And there was people that, friends that didn't make it that I can remember, but everybody over there has memories like that, seeing people killed and friends that didn't make it, so I guess I won't go into that.
What experiences left the greatest impression on you?
When I was in, always having to do what you were told, whether you think it was right or not. And when we had the experience of going off the air with the communications system, we all went before a board, and I saluted. He said, "What happened?" I said, "Well, sir, I thought..." He said, "Stop right there." He said, "See this? I'm an officer. I do the thinking around here. And you don't. You just do what you're told." Dismissed. So that was... I thought, well, if he doesn't even want to hear, how's he ever going to find out what happened? Maybe he already knew, I don't know, but that always made me realize that I was not going to stay in one more day than I had to, because I was thinking about it. Because I did enjoy traveling and seeing these different places. And I worked together with the guys, and we all had a good time, except for a few times. And, but that was most unfortunate that that happened. And I guess landing on that metal strip and blowing all the tires, I thought that was the end. And I was just through, they had a plane crash in Charlotte yesterday. I was just through Charlotte on Monday. A couple of times I've been at airports where there have been plane crashes. Once I was in Chicago the day before, a plane crashed there. And here 2 days before. So you always wonder, you know, when you're going to meet your maker, I guess.
What were your thoughts on the protests back in the U.S.?
Well, at the time we didn't know that there were any protests. We had no newspapers there, except the Stars and Stripes, which was an Army newspaper. Didn't find out till I got back and had a kind of a rude reception. Nobody ever said, "Glad to see you back, sit down, tell me all about it. Boy, it sure was nice of you to go over and do that and defend her." You know, they say, "Well, back to work." And I went back to work with my father until I started college. Because I knew there was not much future there, and I needed to get a college education. And my father was pushing me. I appreciate that. Well, in college, I found out that there were big demonstrations and all these people with long hair. This is like 66, 67, 68. Were demonstrating against the war, and I was mad for about a year, and then I started listening and reading in the paper, and what they had to say seemed to make sense, and it seemed to be an unwinnable war, and I started realizing that could it be that we were losing people, sacrificing our own sons and daughters for nothing? And I refused to believe that. But over the years, you find out that Robert McNamara was lying about the situation over there, and you got General Westmoreland and a few others that were doing all that. And they were saying things were going good when they were going bad. We were losing more because some people weren't even assigned there. They were assigned to like Okinawa and Japan. And like my whole signal company was assigned to Okinawa, so we weren't even there. So when there were casualties, they never even showed up. And also the number of people there, how many ever it was, wasn't the true number. So as the years go by, it's too bad it even had to happen.
After,
And these demonstrations on the college campuses, it turns out they were a good thing, actually. So
after Vietnam, when did you return to the States?
immediately. I mean, I got on a plane in Bangkok and flew to Hawaii and San Francisco, reported to Oakland for out processing. The next day I was out processed, and then I went home. I had saved up the airfare to be sure I could get there. They told me beforehand how much it would cost, so I had the money to do that. The Army didn't pay for that because I was out. I got to keep a few things. Anything that touches your body you can keep. So your socks, your shoes, your fatigues, your gloves, hats. I kept all that stuff. That's basically all I had. Went home and took the bus to my parents' house. Got in about midnight, went up to the bedroom and said I'm back, and they were happy to see me. So I knew where the key was hidden, so I got in the house. The next day, my dad wanted me to down to the sawmill to start working.
What medals and citations did you earn, and what were they for?
I don't know. I got the usual. I was looking through some of my records here as far as like qualifying with rifles, M1, M14, the M30 caliber carbine, M60 machine gun. I got distinguished duty for being in Vietnam, and which, by the way, I guess more than veterans will be watching this, but if you're a veteran and all you need to join like the VFW, if anybody wants to, is that Distinguished Service Medal, I think it's called. Or Campaign Battle Ribbon or something, I don't remember. I got so disillusioned after I got back that I don't even have my dog tags anymore, my medals or anything. I'd like to, sorry I did that, but.
What did you do after you came back home?
Say that again?
What did you do after you came back home?
I went back to work with my father for a while, and then I started college.
Do you belong to any veterans organizations?
Yeah, the VFW, that's it.
Have you attended any reunions?
No.
Have you maintained contact with people you served with?
No.
Do you believe that the U.S. is fighting a just...
Except for Bill Van Hoosen from my hometown, who was in the Air Force, and we were in the same high school class, and at our class reunion we run into each other twice now. So we sit down and talk about the old times, but we don't stay in touch.
Do you believe that the U.S. was fighting a just cause and had a right to be there?
No.
What was the most important or inspiring thing you experienced during your service?
I can't think of a lot of things happened. I don't know. Nothing particularly stands out. Just serving my country, that's all. I guess the fact that I could have stayed out, that's not really inspiring, but I have a bone chip in this elbow, still have it today. I can only bend my arm like that far, that's it. And after I did enlist, instead of being drafted, I went to the physical and I was turned down. They said, because of your limited motion of your arm, you won't be able to serve in the Army. Maybe you can go in the Air Force or the Navy, but not the Army. Well, I wanted to, and I had that good school and everything, and so I went and went to see my doctor and got a note and took it back. And some people would just say, oh, great, I don't have to go in. So I guess. And the fact that I've always worked for the government. I still work for the government today, so that's kind of inspiring, I guess.
In closing, how did your military experience change your life?
Well, it made me a little more accountable. It made me realize how important it is to live a good life. And it made me more responsible, which is like accountable. Just, and it makes me appreciate what the veterans have done. People don't realize leaving home and serving in the military. Most of the people I work with now, working for the government, are not veterans. There's very few. And only one of them I know has actually been in combat. People don't realize what it takes to keep a country free. I mean, if we hadn't defended ourselves, we could be talking German now, or we could, any number of things could have happened. We got a lifestyle here that's unbeatable, but it's taken some sacrifice from a lot of people. And the general population just doesn't seem to care. They just go, it's one big, work your job and have a good time, party as much as people can, go on vacation. Oh yeah, give the military budget, $400 billion, give it to them, keep them happy, keep our country free, and that's it. And then people go on with their lives. What was the question again?
How did the military experience change your life?
Yeah, just maybe appreciate life more, especially here in the United States. This is at the end of 11 weeks of basic. That's me. I was one tough-looking dude ready to take on the world. My buddy Roth signed my picture, which happens to me. Rodriguez there. We had quite a few from the Caribbean we were training at the time. I think the Cuban crisis was going on then. We were trying to train them. That was in front of one of the, not where we slept, but I believe that was the mess hall in, I believe that was in Playcool, Monkey Mountain, and very few pictures. I was the only one with a camera, and so I bet you'll find with a lot of veterans they don't have too many pictures. Tell me when it's on. Oh, that's my buddy from my hometown. I ran into him in the middle of the jungle over there, and that's two Thais, two helpers, and they were very friendly people. Most of them, as far as we know. There were some that, of course, were shooting at us, but for the most part, the ones we hired were pretty good. And Bill was, in the Air Force, he was a medic, giving us Army troops our monthly shots. This is interesting because the trouble link, the one on the left is the end at Pleiku, and the one on the right is the end at Uban. And that's just part of the communications. These antennas generally didn't get shot up because they were a mesh. They weren't solid antennas. Whereas the microwave antennas were solid, and they'd get shot up, or they try to shoot the pole right off and collapse the antenna on the ground. On the left is a hooch where we slept and had our recreation area, which was a few feet by our bed. And you can see the straw roof and the straw eaves there to keep the sun out. And on the right was the water, where we had our showers right underneath. And that's where you'd want to let them warm up during the day, so the water wouldn't be quite so cold. I sometimes took black and white, sometimes color. You got to remember, I was the only one around with a camera. These are the antennas that would typically get shot up. And then we'd have to go through and line them and maybe sometimes replace them. And these are the vans. The reason I took the pictures, we were painting them white. They got so darn hot in the sun. We thought if we painted them white, that would help. Now, the next inspection, we had to paint them back OD, which is green, because the white showed off where they were to the enemy. So that was interesting. That's when I was promoted to Spec 4 just before I left Hawaii, thinking, oh boy, I get to go overseas and see some action, and I was all happy. I was the commanding officer. Used to call him Old Man. That's the local beer. We had to have some kind of entertainment and time off because we didn't work all the time. This had to be plastered on anything we wore. And I like to read an article. I should have done this before. This was in the local paper when we were over there. Here's a greeting, an open letter to all communists who might be trudging down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Welcome to the Republic of Vietnam and the U.S. Marine Corps Theater of Combat Operations. We have presents for you. During the next 2 weeks, we will give you 300 tons of bombs, 2,700 rockets, 30,000 rounds of 20mm cannon fire. If you think this is inhospitable, you may construct buildings and hide in them. We will destroy 700 buildings within the next 2 weeks. We know the figures are predictable because that's exactly what the 4 Marine jet squadrons from Chu Lai and Da Nang slapped your Viet Cong pals with during the last 2 weeks of June. And if anything, the load will increase because Marine Attack Squadron joined the welcoming committee only for the last 8 days. If you find our enthusiasm unreasonable, well, sorry about that. We find it difficult to restrain ourselves. So there was a lot of, for what? Thanksgiving Day, 1964. And look, we even had quite a menu. I guess that's... Finally, these are the places I served Pleiku, and various places in Thailand, Vientiane, Laos, Udorn, Konkan, Ubon, Twin Peaks, Korat, and Khao Yai.